She wasn't expecting love this Christmas until the lonely rancher whispered, "I'm here to hold you." Emma had never been one for big, noisy holiday celebrations. The thought of crowded malls, endless carols, and people rushing past each other in a flurry of excitement always made her feel tired before the season even started. For the past few years, she had quietly avoided the usual Christmas chaos, spending the holiday quietly at home with just a few decorations and a small tree. But this year felt different. She wanted something more. Something quieter, calmer, a place where she could think, breathe, and escape from the city life that had been weighing on her for far too long. Her aunt, who had passed away a few months earlier, had left Emma a small cabin tucked away in the countryside. It wasn't fancy, but it had charm. A stone fireplace, wooden beams, and large windows that looked out over rolling hills blanketed in snow. Emma had visited only a couple of times before, but memories of warm winter mornings there stayed with her. It seemed perfect. A place where she could spend Christmas alone, surrounded by quiet and nature. And so she packed her things and drove out of the city, leaving behind the noise, the lights, and the memories of a past she wasn't ready to relive. The drive was long, but Emma didn't mind. She loved watching the city fade into open fields, then hills, and finally thick forests covered in snow. Each mile seemed to peel away layers of stress she hadn't realized she was carrying. When she finally arrived at the cabin, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the snow-covered landscape. The air smelled crisp, fresh, and alive in a way that the city never could. Emma stepped out of her car, pulling her coat tight around her. She took a deep breath, letting the cold air fill her lungs. For the first time in months, maybe even years, she felt a sense of peace. The cabin looked exactly as she remembered, warm, inviting, and almost magical against the backdrop of the winter hills. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and immediately felt the familiar comfort of wooden floors and the scent of old pine. She smiled to herself. This was exactly what she needed. After unpacking her suitcase and setting out some small decorations, a few candles, a string of lights, and a small wreath on the door, Emma settled by the fireplace with a cup of steaming tea. Outside, snowflakes began to fall softly, covering the landscape in a white blanket. The cabin felt cozy, safe, and a little lonely all at once. She didn't mind. Loneliness was something she had grown used to over the years. In fact, she often found comfort in it. But this year there was something different about the quiet. It didn't feel empty. It felt full of possibility, as though the world outside was holding a secret she hadn't discovered yet. The first night passed quietly. Emma read by the fire, wrote in her journal, and listened to the soft whisper of snow against the windows. She thought about the past year, about the people she had met, the friendships that had faded, and the love she had avoided. She thought about the heartbreak that had left her cautious protective of her own heart. And though it hurt to remember, it also reminded her why she had chosen this small cabin, far from the city, far from complications, far from people who might disappoint her. The next morning, Emma woke early to the sound of birds chirping and the crunch of snow under some unknown animal's feet outside. She pulled on her boots, wrapped a scarf around her neck, and stepped out onto the porch. The world was dazzling. Sparkling snow under a pale blue sky, trees heavy with frost, and hills that stretched far into the distance. Her heart lifted without her even realizing it. For the first time in a long while, she felt a lightness, a hope she had thought was gone. As she sipped her coffee on the porch, she noticed something in the distance, a large ranch on the edge of the hills. A few barns, a fenced pasture, and smoke rising from a chimney. It was small, simple, and somehow comforting. Emma didn't know who lived there, but the sight of it sparked a strange curiosity. She had always loved stories of people living closer to the land, finding peace in hard work, and creating a life tied to nature. And now, seeing it with her own eyes, she felt a longing she hadn't expected. Over the next few days, Emma settled into a gentle routine. She cleaned the cabin, baked bread, and went on long walks in the snow. She listened to the wind in the trees, watched the animals in the fields, and allowed herself to be fully present in each moment. It was exactly the solitude she had been craving, but even in this peaceful routine, she couldn't shake a faint feeling that something was about to change. She didn't know what or when, but a part of her heart whispered that this Christmas might be different from all the others. One chilly afternoon, as she wandered through the snow-covered path near the cabin, she saw movement at the edge of the trees. A figure was trudging through the snow, carrying a stack of firewood. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in simple, sturdy clothing. There was something calm and confident about him, a quiet strength that seemed to belong to the land itself. Emma stopped, unsure whether to call out or wait, and the man noticed her. He smiled politely, a warm, reassuring smile that made her chest tighten with a feeling she hadn't felt in years. Interest. "Hello there," he said in a deep, friendly voice. "The snow's heavier than I expected today." "Yes, it is," she replied, her voice softer than she intended. "I haven't seen you around before. Are you visiting?" he asked. Yes," Emma answered. "I'm staying at my aunt's cabin nearby." "I'm Luke. I live over at the ranch." Emma found herself smiling. There was a kindness in his eyes, a gentleness that felt safe. "Emma," she said, and held out her hand. They shook hands, and just like that, a quiet connection was formed. There was no rush, no pressure, just a simple acknowledgement of each other's presence. Luke offered to help carry some of the firewood back to the cabin, and Emma, though hesitant, as they walked together through the snow, Emma felt a warmth she hadn't realized she was missing. It wasn't romantic, at least not yet. It was something simpler, a reminder that human connection could exist even in the quietest, most unexpected places. That evening, as Emma sat by the fire, she couldn't stop thinking about the rancher she had met. She didn't know him, yet something about him felt familiar, comforting. She told herself it was just the winter air playing tricks on her, or perhaps the magic of the countryside. Still, a spark had been lit, a tiny flicker of curiosity, of hope, of life returning to a heart that had grown cautious. Emma's first week at the cabin passed in this way, peaceful, quiet, and yet quietly alive. She explored the surrounding woods, noticed the patterns of the wildlife, and began to feel a part of the world around her in a way she hadn't in years. And every now and then she would catch a glimpse of the ranch, smoke curling from the chimney, and wonder about the man who lived there. Who was he? What was his life like? She couldn't explain why she felt so drawn to the idea of him, but she knew one thing. This Christmas, she wasn't expecting love. Yet, deep inside, a small voice whispered that life had a way of surprising even the most cautious hearts. By the end of the week, Emma had grown comfortable in her solitude, but also restless in a new, unfamiliar way. She wanted to explore, to understand the rhythm of life in this quiet place, and perhaps to learn about the people who shared it with her, even if it was just a kind smile from a distant neighbor. She had come to the cabin seeking peace, but the world had already begun to hint at something more, something unexpected, something that might change everything. Emma woke to another frosty morning. The sun was still low, casting pale light across the snow-covered hills. She brewed a cup of tea and wrapped herself in a warm blanket, sitting by the window and watching the smoke curl from the distant chimney of the ranch she had seen the week before. Something about it called to her. Perhaps it was the sense of life and warmth it promised. Perhaps it was the curiosity about the man she had met, Luke. She hadn't expected to think about him so much, but his friendly smile and calm presence had left a gentle mark on her mind. After breakfast, Emma decided to take a walk along the small path that wound down toward the ranch. She didn't know why she felt drawn there, only that the thought of spending more time in the open, in the crisp winter air, felt right. Bundled in her coat, scarf, and boots, she stepped into the snow, leaving a trail of footprints behind her. The world was quiet, broken only by the soft crunch of snow beneath her feet and the occasional chirp of a bird. As she walked closer, she saw Luke again, this time feeding a group of chickens in the small fenced yard of his ranch. His movements were calm, methodical, and natural, as if he had been born to this life. He looked up and smiled when he noticed her. "Good morning," he called. "Careful. The snow was a little slippery near the barn." Emma smiled back, her nerves fluttering in a way she hadn't felt in years. "Good morning. Thank you. I'll watch my step." Luke gestured toward a small path that led around the barn. "If you want, I can show you a safer way through the yard. The snow can be tricky for people not used to it." Emma hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that. Thank you." He led her carefully around the barn, his hand occasionally brushing against hers to steady her. Emma felt a warmth spread through her, not just from the physical contact, but from the care in his tone and gestures. There was no rush, no awkwardness, just simple kindness, something she had learned to value more than she realized. Once they were safely past the slippery patches, Luke offered her a warm smile. "You're braver than most city people I know. Walking through this snow isn't easy, especially when it's deep like this." Emma laughed softly. "I guess I have a little stubbornness in me." She paused, then added quietly, "And I like exploring." "That's good," Luke said, his eyes softening. "Life's too short not to explore a little." As they walked together, he began telling her small stories about the ranch, the animals, the work, and the quiet beauty of winter mornings. He spoke without bragging, simply sharing his life with a gentle honesty that made Emma feel included. She listened closely, fascinated by how someone could find such peace in hard work and routine. She realized she had been craving something like this for a long time, something real, simple, and grounded. At one point, Luke stopped and gestured toward a small wooden fence where a few goats were huddled together. These little guys are always curious about visitors. They're friendly, but stubborn too. Emma knelt down and reached out, letting one of the goats sniff her gloved hand. It nuzzled her gently, making her laugh. "They are stubborn," she said, "but sweet." "That's a good way to describe most of us, too." His tone was teasing, but there was a sincerity beneath it that made Emma's chest warm. For a moment they walked in comfortable silence, listening to the wind rustle through the trees and the occasional clatter of the barn door. Emma felt a strange sense of calm and connection, as though she had known him longer than a few days. "You know," Luke said suddenly, breaking the quiet, "I don't get many visitors this time of year. Most people avoid the cold or the snow or just prefer the city lights, so it's nice to have company, even if it's just a short walk." Emma felt her heart flutter. There was no hidden meaning in his words, no pressure, just a simple honesty. "I'm glad I came," she admitted softly. "It feels peaceful here. Different from the city. I think I needed this more than I realized." Luke nodded, as if he understood without needing more explanation. Sometimes that's exactly what we need. Just a little space to breathe away from everything else. They continued their walk, and Luke offered to show her the barn where he stored hay and tools. Inside, the smell of hay mixed with the crisp winter air, creating a comforting, earthy scent. Luke moved with ease, showing her around while explaining small tasks like stacking hay and checking the animals. Emma listened intently, eager to learn, and even tried helping, laughing when she struggled to lift a bale. "You're doing fine," Luke encouraged. "It takes time to get used to this work, but you've got the spirit for it." Emma smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment she hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just about the physical work. It was the feeling of being useful, of connecting to something tangible and real. She realized that part of her had been longing for this, even if she hadn't known it. After a while, Luke suggested they take a break and walked with her to a small spot overlooking the hills. The view was breathtaking, snow-covered fields stretching into the distance, the sun glinting off icy branches, and the gentle slope of hills fading into the horizon. Emma felt a peace she hadn't known in years, a quiet happiness that came from simply being present. Luke handed her a thermos of hot cocoa. "Here." "You've earned it," he said, smiling. Emma took it gratefully, savoring the warmth. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft. This is perfect." They sat together in companionable silence, sipping their cocoa and watching the world around them. For the first time in a long while, Emma allowed herself to just be. There was no rush, no expectations, only the simple joy of being alive, surrounded by beauty and kindness. As the day wore on, they returned to the cabin, and Luke offered to help Emma carry some firewood back inside. His presence was steady, reassuring, and somehow comforting in a way she hadn't expected. "You're really making me feel at home here," Emma said quietly as she stacked the firewood. Luke smiled, a hint of shyness in his eyes. "I'm glad. That's all I ever want, to help people feel comfortable here. The world is hard enough without feeling unwelcome somewhere." That evening, after Luke had left to tend to his chores, Emma sat by the fire and reflected on the day. She realized how much she had enjoyed his company. Not in a romantic way yet, but in a way that made her feel connected, seen, and understood. There was a gentleness to him that was rare, a quiet patience and kindness that had made even the simplest tasks feel special. She knew one thing for certain. She hadn't expected to meet anyone this Christmas. She had come to the countryside seeking solitude, a quiet escape from the city in her past. Yet, somehow, the universe had a way of surprising her. A new presence had entered her world, gentle and unassuming, and yet it had made her heart feel lighter, her thoughts brighter, and her days fuller. As snow fell softly outside her window that night, Emma felt a strange mixture of peace and excitement. Peace, because she was exactly where she needed to be. Excitement, because she didn't know what might come next. She had come expecting nothing, but already life had begun to show her a new possibility, a connection, a friendship, and perhaps a beginning she hadn't thought she would find. And so, as the fire crackled and the wind whispered through the trees, Emma closed her eyes and allowed herself to hope. Hope that this Christmas might be different. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she had found something worth holding on to. Something or someone. Unexpected. The next morning, Emma woke to the soft glow of sunlight spilling through the cabin windows. Snow still blanketed the fields outside, sparkling like tiny diamonds in the early light. She felt a gentle excitement in her chest, a quiet anticipation she couldn't quite explain. Yesterday had been wonderful, peaceful, warm, and full of laughter she hadn't realized she had missed. But today felt like it might be even better. She wasn't sure why, but part of her hoped she would see Luke again. After a simple breakfast of toast and hot cocoa, Emma bundled up in her thickest coat, scarf, and gloves. She decided to take another walk through the snow, this time following a path that led closer to the ranch. Her curiosity about Luke and his life had grown stronger, and she found herself wanting to see the place that seemed so alive with quiet beauty. She didn't know what she expected, but even the thought of walking toward the ranch filled her with a sense of purpose. As she reached the edge of the path, she saw movement ahead. Luke was there, tending to a small group of horses. One horse had a slightly tangled mane, and he was carefully brushing it out, humming softly as he worked. When he noticed Emma, he smiled warmly and waved. "Good morning, Emma," he called. His voice had a comforting rhythm that made her smile. "Good morning," she replied, feeling a little nervous. She wasn't sure why, but being near him stirred a flutter of excitement she hadn't felt in years. "Come closer," he said. "I could use an extra pair of hands. Nothing too hard, I promise." Emma walked over, her boots crunching in the snow. Luke handed her a soft brush. "Here, we can work on the horses together. It's easier with two people, and they seem to enjoy the company." At first, Emma was tentative, unsure how to handle the horse, but Luke guided her gently, showing her how to brush along the animal's coat in the right direction, how to calm it when it shifted its weight, and how to speak softly so it felt safe. Emma listened carefully, laughing quietly at her own mistakes, and soon she found herself enjoying the work. The horse seemed to like her, nuzzling her shoulder occasionally, and she felt a quiet sense of pride. "You're a natural," Luke said after a while, his smile soft and sincere. "Most people are scared of horses, but you've got patience. That's the most important thing." Emma felt the warmth in her chest. "Thank you, I guess I just like being gentle with them. They're not like people. They trust you if you take care of them." Luke nodded. "Exactly, and sometimes people need that too." She looked at him, a question in her eyes. Luke smiled but said nothing, letting the words hang in the air. Emma realized he wasn't speaking just about the horses. There was a deeper meaning, something unspoken between them, and it made her heart beat faster. After brushing the horses, Luke suggested they gather some hay for the animals. Emma followed him to the barn, where he showed her how to lift and stack the bales carefully. It was hard work, but she didn't mind. She liked the feeling of doing something real, of being part of the daily rhythm of life on the ranch. Luke moved beside her, steady and patient, offering encouragement without being overbearing. "You're stronger than you think," he said as she lifted a particularly heavy bale. "City life doesn't always prepare you for this kind of work, but you're handling it well. I didn't think I would enjoy this, but I do. It feels satisfying." Luke's eyes softened. "That's the best feeling, when work makes you feel alive instead of tired." They continued with their tasks, sharing quiet conversation and small laughter. Emma felt herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. She realized that spending time with Luke, learning from him, and sharing these simple moments made her feel connected, not just to him, but to the world around her. The snow, the animals, the crisp air, it all felt more vivid and alive because she wasn't alone. As the afternoon sun began to lower in the sky, Luke suggested they take a break. He led her to a small hill overlooking the ranch, where the horses grazed peacefully in the distance. He handed her a thermos of hot cocoa and a small blanket to wrap around her shoulders. Emma accepted it gratefully, feeling the warmth seep into her cold fingers. "Thank you," she said softly. Luke smiled, watching her with gentle eyes. "You don't have to thank me. It's nice to have company. Makes the work lighter, the day brighter." They sat in silence for a while, watching the world around them. Snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky, settling on the horses' backs and the wooden fences. The quiet was soothing, filled with a calm energy that seemed to pause time itself. Emma found herself leaning slightly toward Luke, feeling a comfort she hadn't known she needed. After a moment, Luke spoke again. Most people don't come out here unless they have a reason. The city is easier, faster, louder. But I can see why someone would want to leave all that behind for a while. There's peace in this life, if you know where to look." Emma nodded. "I understand. I've been looking for peace for a long time. Maybe I finally found a little here." Luke's smile widened. "I think you have. And the funny thing is, sometimes when you think you're only looking for peace, life finds a way to surprise you with something more." Emma looked at him, a spark of curiosity in her eyes. "Something more?" she asked. Luke's gaze softened, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The wind rustled through the trees and the snow continued to fall softly around them. Emma felt her heart flutter. She didn't know what he meant exactly, but she felt the weight of his words in a way that touched her deeply. After their break, they returned to the barn and finished the chores for the day. Emma felt a quiet pride in the work they had done together. It wasn't glamorous or easy, but it felt meaningful. She realized that these moments, the small tasks, the shared laughter, the simple conversations, were more powerful than anything she had expected to experience. As the day turned to evening, Luke offered to walk her back to her cabin. Emma accepted, feeling a strange reluctance to say goodbye. The path was quiet, the snow glowing under the soft light of the moon. Their footsteps left a trail behind them, side by side, and Emma felt a growing sense of closeness she hadn't anticipated. "You know," Luke said, breaking the silence, "it's nice to have someone to share these moments with. Life can be lonely sometimes, even in a place like this. But it's better with company." Emma smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I feel the same way. I didn't expect to meet anyone this Christmas, but I'm glad I did." They reached the cabin, and Luke paused at the door. "I should probably get back to the ranch before it gets too dark, but I'll see you tomorrow?" Emma nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. "I'd like that." As Luke walked away, Emma closed the door and leaned against it, feeling a mixture of happiness and nervous anticipation. She hadn't expected to form a connection so quickly, especially during a week she had planned to spend alone. Yet here she was, thinking about Luke, looking forward to seeing him again, and feeling a spark of hope she hadn't felt in years. That night, as she sat by the fire, Emma reflected on the day. She realized that something was changing inside her. She had come to the countryside seeking solitude, but instead she had found companionship, trust, and the beginnings of a friendship she knew could grow into something more. Luke had a way of making her feel seen, heard, and understood, without ever pushing or demanding anything from her. It was a rare gift, and she cherished it deeply. Before going to bed, she looked out the window at the ranch in the distance. The light from the barn glowed softly, casting long shadows across the snow. She felt a quiet sense of gratitude for the snow, for the beauty of the land, and for the unexpected kindness of a man who had entered her life like a gentle whisper. Emma didn't know what the coming days would bring. She didn't know if this connection with Luke would deepen or if it was just a fleeting moment of warmth in a cold winter. But one thing was certain. Her heart felt lighter, her spirit brighter, and her world fuller than it had in a long time. And for the first time in years, Emma allowed herself to hope, not just for peace, but for something more. Something she hadn't expected, something she had never sought, but something that now felt possible. The days that followed passed in a rhythm Emma had never known before. She woke each morning to the crisp air, to the soft sound of snow settling on the hills, and to the anticipation of seeing Luke again. Their walks, chores, and shared moments had become the highlight of her days, and she found herself smiling more often, laughing more easily, and feeling lighter than she had in years. Yet, as much as she cherished these moments, a small part of her mind remained guarded. Past hurts and heartbreaks were not easy to forget, and she often wondered if she was letting herself hope too much. One chilly afternoon, Emma was walking along the familiar path toward the ranch when she noticed movement in the distance. It wasn't Luke this time, but a familiar figure from her past, her ex-boyfriend Daniel. Her chest tightened immediately. She hadn't expected to see him here, so far from the city, in a place she had thought would be untouched by old memories. "Emma?" Daniel called, a mix of surprise and hesitation in his voice. Emma froze, unsure of what to say. "Daniel," she replied softly, trying to keep her voice steady. He stepped closer, his expression awkward. "I didn't expect to find you here. I just came to town for a few days." Emma felt a swirl of emotions, anger, confusion, and a hint of sadness. She had moved far away from this chapter of her life, seeking peace, and now it had followed her here. She wanted to turn and walk away, to retreat into the safety of her cabin in the quiet she had been building for herself. But something inside her hesitated. Before she could respond, Luke appeared, carrying a small bale of hay. His eyes immediately registered the tension in the air. He approached slowly, giving her space, but standing close enough to show he was aware and ready to support her. "Emma," he said softly, his tone steady. "Is everything okay?" Emma took a deep breath. "It's Daniel, my ex." Luke nodded, understanding without needing more explanation. "Do you want me to?" "No," she said quickly, surprising herself. "I can handle this." Daniel looked between Emma and Luke, sensing the quiet strength in the way Luke stood. There was no hostility in Luke's gaze, only calm and reassurance, and somehow that made Emma feel braver. She straightened her shoulders and met Daniel's eyes. "I'm here for a short visit," Daniel said. "I didn't know you were in the countryside." Emma nodded. "I needed a break from the city. I needed peace." Daniel hesitated, and Emma realized he had expected more warmth or a familiar connection. Instead, she felt distant, detached, and resolute. She was no longer the same person he had known. Luke stepped slightly forward. "I think she's found what she needed here," he said quietly, his voice calm but firm. "I hope you respect that." Daniel looked at Luke, then at Emma, and for a moment the silence between them was heavy. Finally he nodded, understanding that Emma had moved on. "I see," he said softly. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I wanted to say hello." Emma gave a small nod, feeling a sense of relief. "Thank you," she said. "That's all I needed." As Daniel walked away down the snow-covered path, Emma felt a mixture of emotions: sadness for the past, relief for the present, and gratitude for the support Luke had silently offered. She realized how much she had grown since arriving at the cabin. She was stronger, braver, and more confident in her choices, and she was beginning to understand that life could surprise her in ways she had never imagined. Luke stayed with her for a few moments, offering quiet comfort. "You handled that well," he said softly. "I know it wasn't easy." Emma smiled faintly. "I think having you here helped." "Thank you." Luke shrugged modestly. "You don't need me to be brave, Emma. You are." The moment passed, and they continued their walk, though Emma noticed a subtle change in their dynamic. There was an unspoken closeness, a gentle tension that had grown as they spent more time together. It wasn't discomfort or fear, but the quiet awareness that they were beginning to care for each other in a deeper way. Over the next few days, Emma and Luke's bond deepened. They worked side by side on ranch tasks, shared meals in the cabin, and spent evenings by the fire talking about their lives, dreams, and fears. Emma found herself opening up about her past, her heartbreak, and the reasons she had chosen to come here. Luke shared his own stories of loss, loneliness, and the quiet struggles of running a ranch. In each other, they found understanding and empathy, a sense of connection that felt rare and precious. One evening, after finishing chores, Luke invited Emma to help decorate the barn for Christmas. They hung simple lights, strung garlands of pine, and set up a small tree. As they worked, their hands occasionally brushed, sending small sparks of awareness between them. Emma felt a warmth in her chest she couldn't ignore. "You're really good at this," Luke said, smiling as he adjusted a string of lights. Emma laughed softly. "I guess I have a knack for making things look cozy." "Cozy suits you." The barn glowed with light and warmth, the snow outside reflecting the golden glow. For a moment they paused, standing side by side, and simply looked at what they had created together. Emma felt a quiet contentment, a sense of belonging she hadn't realized she had been missing. As they cleaned up, a sudden snowstorm blew in, the wind howling through the trees and snow drifting across the path. Luke looked at Emma, concern in his eyes. "We should get you back to the cabin before it gets worse." Emma nodded, grateful for his presence. They walked slowly through the snow, the wind biting at their faces, but Luke's steady presence beside her made the journey feel safe. At one point, he gently took her hand to help her balance on a slippery patch. The contact was brief, but it sent a warm shiver through Emma, making her heart race. When they reached the cabin, Emma turned to him, her cheeks flushed from the cold. "Thank you, Luke, for everything today, for being here." Luke smiled, his gaze soft. "Always. You don't have to say it. I'll always be here when you need someone." For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The snow fell softly outside, the cabin glowed warmly, and inside, two hearts quietly acknowledged the growing connection between them. Emma realized she had never felt this kind of safety and care before. It wasn't about grand gestures or words. It was the simple, consistent presence of someone who truly understood her. That night, as she sat by the fire, Emma reflected on the week. She had faced a challenge she hadn't expected, seeing her past in the form of Daniel, but she had handled it with strength and dignity. More importantly, she had felt the quiet support of Luke, someone who had shown her that trust and care could exist without pressure or expectation. She realized that her heart was slowly opening, allowing herself to hope and to feel again. She thought about Luke's words from earlier, the quiet hint that life could surprise her with something more. At first she had wondered what he meant, but now she understood. Life had already surprised her. It had brought someone into her world who was patient, kind, and genuine, someone who made her feel safe and valued. And in the midst of the snow, the cold, and the quiet, Emma realized that she was ready for whatever might come next. As she closed her eyes, listening to the soft crackle of the fire and the whisper of the wind outside, Emma allowed herself to imagine a future she hadn't dared to consider before, a future where warmth, companionship, and love were not only possible, but real. She didn't know exactly what the next days would bring, but for the first time in years she felt ready to face them, with courage, hope, and an open heart. And somewhere in the quiet of the snowy night she felt it, a gentle promise that this Christmas, and perhaps the ones to come, could be filled with more than solitude. They could be filled with connection, trust, and the unexpected gift of love. The morning of Christmas Eve arrived with a soft hush over the countryside. The snow glimmered like millions of tiny stars, and the cabin was warm and cozy from the fire that Emma had kept burning all night. She woke with a gentle anticipation in her chest, feeling a lightness she hadn't known for years. This Christmas felt different. There was excitement in the air, but also a quiet peace that had settled deep in her heart. Emma dressed quickly, layering herself in warm clothes, and stepped out onto the porch. The world outside was breathtaking. The hills blanketed in white, smoke rising from the ranch chimneys, and the soft morning light reflecting off the snow. She took a deep breath, savoring the crisp air, and felt a wave of gratitude for the quiet life she had discovered here. She had come seeking solitude, but life had a way of surprising her. After breakfast, she decided to take a short walk through the snow-covered path toward the ranch. It had become a habit over the past weeks, a small ritual that brought her joy. As she approached, she saw Luke busy outside tending to the animals. He looked up and smiled when he saw her, and the warmth in that simple gesture made her heart skip a beat. "Morning, Emma," he said, his voice steady and kind. "Ready for a busy day?" Emma smiled, adjusting her scarf. "I think so. I'd like to help, if you don't mind." "Of course. We can use the extra hands today. Let's start with the horses. They'll need some brushing before the evening." They spent the morning together, working side by side with quiet ease. Emma brushed the horses, fed the chickens, and helped stack firewood. Every small task felt significant, as if they were preparing not just for the animals, but for the spirit of the day itself. Luke moved with his usual calm strength, guiding her gently when needed, and Emma felt a closeness that went beyond friendship. There was comfort in his presence, a sense of safety and trust that she had never allowed herself to feel before. By late afternoon, they had finished the chores and decided to take a short break. Luke led her to a small clearing near the ranch, where the snow glowed in the soft light of the setting sun. He handed her a thermos of cocoa, and they sat together, sharing the quiet beauty of the moment. "You know," Luke said softly, "Christmas is a time for surprises. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones you don't expect." Emma looked at him, a faint blush on her cheeks. "I think I understand what you mean. This year has already given me something I never imagined: peace, friendship, and maybe even something more." Luke's gaze lingered on her, warm and steady. "Maybe more is exactly what we need. Sometimes we don't know what we're missing until it finds us." Emma's heart fluttered, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The world felt suspended in that quiet, snowy glow, and the air was filled with the gentle promise of possibility. As evening approached, Luke suggested they go back to the barn and finish decorating for Christmas. The barn was already warm from the lanterns they had lit, and the snow outside created a magical backdrop. They hung the last garlands, adjusted the lights, and placed a small tree in the corner. The barn now glowed with a soft, inviting light, and Emma felt a sense of accomplishment and joy that went far beyond the physical work. Luke stood beside her, his hand brushing hers as they reached for the same decoration. Emma felt a shiver of excitement, and Luke's eyes met hers with a gentle understanding. "Emma," he began, his voice low and steady, "I've been meaning to tell you something." Emma's breath caught, and she turned to him, waiting. "I know you came here expecting solitude," Luke continued, "but I hope you felt something more. Something real. I want you to know, I care for you, Emma, more than I can put into words. And, if you'll let me, I want to be here for you, not just today, not just this Christmas, but always." Emma's eyes widened, and warmth spread through her chest. She realized that the feelings she had been quietly growing over the past weeks, trust, curiosity, hope, were now blooming into something deeper. She had been cautious, protecting her heart, but Luke's words made her feel safe enough to let go of that fear. I feel the same," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't expect to feel this way, but I do. You've made me feel seen, understood, and happy in a way I haven't in years." Luke smiled, stepping closer. "Then maybe this Christmas we can give ourselves a gift neither of us expected." Emma nodded, tears of joy threatening to fall, and Luke gently took her hands in his. The world outside the barn seemed to fade, leaving only the warmth between them, the soft glow of lights, and the quiet magic of a snow-covered Christmas Eve. For a long moment, they simply stood there, holding each other's hands, hearts beating in unison, and acknowledging the bond that had grown quietly over days of snow, work, and shared moments. Then, slowly, Luke leaned forward, brushing a soft kiss across her forehead. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the warmth, comfort, and promise in that simple gesture. It was tender, respectful, and filled with all the unspoken emotions that had built between them. "I'm here to hold you," Luke whispered, his voice gentle but firm. "To support you, to care for you if you'll let me." Emma's heart swelled, and for the first time in a long while she allowed herself to believe in something she had been avoiding. Love. Not rushed, not forced, but real, gentle, and true. She nodded, leaning into him, feeling the warmth of his embrace. In that moment, the world seemed to stand still. Snowflakes danced softly outside. The barn glowed with golden light, and Emma felt a happiness she hadn't thought possible. They spent the rest of the evening in quiet companionship, sitting by the fire in the barn, sharing hot cocoa and watching the snow fall. There was no need for words to fill the spaces between them. Every glance, every touch, and every quiet laugh spoke volumes. Emma realized that Christmas had given her more than solitude. It had given her hope, trust, and the possibility of love. As night fell, Luke walked her back to the cabin. The path was still covered in soft snow, and the stars shone brightly in the clear sky. Emma felt a mixture of joy and anticipation, knowing that this night would be remembered forever. At the cabin door they paused. Luke took her hands gently in his eyes searching hers. "Merry Christmas, Emma," he said softly. "Merry Christmas, Luke," she replied, smiling through tears of happiness. And then, under the quiet glow of the moon and the sparkling snow, they shared a tender, unhurried kiss, a promise of trust, care, and love. It was not just a moment of romance, but a celebration of the journey they had taken together, the solitude, the laughter, the work, and the quiet understanding that had brought them to this point. Inside, Emma felt a warmth that went beyond the fire or the cocoa. She felt a sense of belonging, of being seen and valued, and of knowing that life could surprise even the most cautious hearts. She had come to the countryside expecting nothing, seeking only peace, and yet she had found something extraordinary, someone who understood her, cared for her, and offered her love without expectation or demand. That night, as she lay in her cozy cabin listening to the wind whisper through the trees and the snow settling softly outside, Emma reflected on the past weeks. She had faced challenges, revisited old memories, and opened her heart in ways she hadn't thought possible. And through it all, Luke had been there, steady, patient, and kind. She realized that this Christmas was not just about the holiday, but about the unexpected gifts life could offer when one allowed themselves to hope. Emma closed her eyes, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. For the snow, for the quiet, for the animals, for the beauty of the countryside, and most of all, for Luke. She knew that this was only the beginning of something beautiful, a bond built on trust, care, and the gentle unfolding of love. Outside the world was quiet and still, blanketed in snow and sparkling under the stars. Inside, Emma's heart was full, her spirit light, and her soul alive with the magic of an unexpected Christmas. She had found peace, companionship, and love, all in one remarkable winter. And as she drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep, Emma knew one thing for certain. This Christmas, she hadn't just found warmth or joy, she had found a heart willing to hold hers forever.